Welcome to part 3 of our Google homepage cloning, where we practice our HTML and CSS skills. If you missed any of the previous lessons, the links will be here in the description. My name is Felipe Perin from Frontend Road, and my aim is to help you land your first job as a front-end developer. What we need to do next then, it's our content here. First, it should be centralized vertically and horizontally. And for that, you probably already know the drill, but let's inspect it here, get to our content itself, and what we need to add, display flags. Now, we need to add align items to the center to bring everything vertically, and also justify content to the center. It's already centered here because the screen is quite small. Let's move a bit the screen here, okay. And it's broken, yes, because we didn't specify what the flag's direction of being a column. In this case, we don't want our items to be one next to each other in the same line, but we want to have them one on each line. So we add the column and they will keep this direction. Also be good when we add the image later. I'm going then, of course, to bring this to our code base. And here we have our content. I'm going to add here. And as usual, let me put the display flags in the beginning. And we have here to make sure that our page still works as expected. The spacings, though, they are quite wrong. And the whole style of this part, yes, it's quite out of the mark. And I think that let's work first with the spacings and to be a bit easier, just at least to have a bit more breathing room. Let's check out how Google exactly does on their side. Because if we have here then, okay, I already see a div that has a padding. And most likely, okay, then we have another div here that encapsulates all of this inside the form. That's interesting. And then we have one div outer of everything, which gives another padding between the image and the other small section. This padding here, we have a 20 top on 20 bottom and also 20 left, which is why most likely the search bar is always with 20 pixels of difference from the page. So that's quite interesting to know. And inside this div, we also saw there was another one, a form with a div inside. Let's find it. It was this one. It was need to navigate a bit. And this one has 18 pixels of padding here, as you can see, and also a height of 70. So this height is clearly more than the size of the buttons. Clearly more, especially if you can see that the buttons are centered on it. And we can do this several ways. We can just use exactly the same proportions, or we can create a div with the height of the buttons already and increase this padding a bit more, a bit less, what it feels best. I'm saying that this second option may be a bit better, at least for now, and let's keep it that way then. What I'm going to come back here to our HTML is that this input search, we don't touch it for now, but this section of the buttons, we're going to create a class here, of course, which will be actions container. Let's call it that way. Now, in the actions container, and I'm going to bring this closer to the content. As you can see, I try to keep the content here, the footer here, everyone like on their own part. As organization, whenever we also go for like React and other component frameworks, it's a bit easier to control as we have smaller CSS files, and these smaller CSS files then build a big CSS file in the end, but no one sees that. Actions container will have a padding top of this segment. Let's put it here, maybe 32 pixels. I'm going to say a padding overall of 32 pixels and 0 horizontally. If we come back to our page, refresh, our buttons now have quite a bit of space. But of course, they are not taking, they're still a bit weirdly because the spacing here is not the same as the one here. It's quite different because of the spacing in the language container, which is a paragraph, the default spacing. So let's remove that. I'm going to say here the language container has a margin of 0 completely. And let's also add here content actions containers, make sure it's the one inside. Now, yes, we have the same spacing, not exactly the same, seems a bit bigger on our end, so I'm going to reduce this to 28. And if you see that I have a tendency to always use multiples of 4, you are right. Refresh. Now it seems better. It seems quite good actually. But to make it a bit more easy to visualize, let's add some the size and the height here, like the height and the width, sorry, for the buttons and also for this input. So then to be a bit closer to what we really have. For that, we need to first understand what is the height of these inputs here, which in their case it's a button. So it is a 34 and also has a border of 1. So a total here of 36 we see. Let's get to it. Our buttons, which will be inside the action container. So buttons, actions container. Do I give another class here or just say button? I'm going to keep it button. I think it's quite specific already. But again, you can choose a class here. There's really no precise best answer. It's each use case, it's each use case. And here the height. And now I forgot. I started talking about other stuff and I forgot it's a 34 pixels. You refresh our page, come back to our page here. Okay, they're feeling a bit bigger, which it looks nice. And also there's a padding of 16 pixels on each side. So let's add that as well. Padding 16 pixels, 0. Come back to our page. I put it in the wrong direction. Don't judge me, don't judge me. Here looks better. What is missing still, it's the spacing between them, the buttons themselves. 4 pixels on each side of margin. Let's add that right away. A margin of 0, 4 pixels, and our page. They should spread a bit apart. Let's go for the input. The input, what is the size that Google uses? Google uses a div here for the input. As you can see, until you get the text area and stuff. But it uses an input which has an overall height of 46. So let's add this to our input. Input type search. Here I'm going to class search input, which will be just a bit before the content, the actions container. So here, as it comes before also in the HTML, I'm keeping this structure. Height of, I forgot again, 46 pixels. And most likely there will be some padding and all inside, but we're going to deal with that later because the icons that are inside, they'll need to be set in some specific way. So we're going to deal with that later on. But what we do have is, of course, the width, which here is 582. But we know that if we reduce enough, it will reduce as much as possible. So what we have here is actually a width of 100% of the div that is above it, which is this one, as you can see here. And this div then controls the size of the input. And we also have, let me check exactly where this style is, this border radius. You can see the border radius here? Yeah, let's get to it. So the input itself, the content, we set it as a width of 100% here, 100 viewport. But as we just saw, we cannot do it. So, or we change this and work with this width in a bit different way, or we create another container around the rest of our content in order to make sure that they follow the correct width. I'm going to choose the first option. And here then we can set the width, indeed, to the 100 viewport width. But we need to set a max width as well of, here in this case, 582 pixels. It's really precise. So I'm going to choose just 580, okay? Forgive my rounding down here. And of course, we're going to need to center then this icon on the screen itself. Let's then come back here, refresh, because we have then our container here, the content with the correct width as we decided, but not on the correct position. For that, we can use simply a margin 0 auto, bring it to the center. And what is missing now then is to let this input have a width of 100% and a border radius. I mentioned it's quite rounded, so 16 pixels, no 20, 24. 24 seems more like it, right? 28 even. I'm going to let it 28. Let's bring this to our search input. So here a width of 100%, border radius 28, and margin 0 auto for our content. Refreshing our page, making sure everything is fine. That's it. Now you see that the structure of the page, of course, there's still a lot of stuff missing, but the structure of it, it's looking quite similar. Like the content and small details, yes, they're missing, but the structure of the page itself, not too different. What I noticed though is that our content it's a bit more to the center than the one of Google, most likely because Google only considers the center of this white area and not the footer, and while we are considering the whole page itself. So that's why it's a bit more to the center. I don't see it as a problem, so I'm just going to leave it as is, but if you want to make it a bit more up, please feel free to do so. What I want to do next, though, is to improve all these fonts that we have because they look nowhere near the ones of Google. As you can see here, they're looking way, way better. And this, I think it will help us a lot. In the same time, I'm going to work a bit on the font size because I see this is slightly smaller than what we have here. So let's get to it. So let's see what Google uses for us to be able to copy it as well. Here we have, I just want to see the height, the font size here, it's 13 pixels for these links. Here on the footer, we have, I'm seeing here the computer, let's see, font size 14. This one, 15, it's quite precise. Huh? And the links on top here need to be 13 as well. So 13, 14, 15. The links I'm going to add here actually. All the links should have a font size of 13 pixels by default. And then the links inside our footer, so inside the links group here, we'll have a 14, and the text inside the extra info section will have a font size of 15. That's quite precise. Let's come back to our page, see if it, okay. They are a bit smaller here. It looks better. What I missed here, it was this text. And this text should also be 13, just like this one. So let's get to it. This 13, let's see here, actions container button, have here the link, language container, font size, 13 pixels. We could define this font size here directly on the body, also an alternative, as this, but this will may have other changes that we don't want to see. So let's refresh here, see that indeed here it got smaller, and the buttons should have, what is the size of the font here in the buttons? Let me check, font size 14 pixels for the buttons. Let's add them. Here, where is the button? the buttons are here. Content actions container, button, font size 14 pixels. We could add these as variables, the 13, the 14, the 15, but it's hard to make sense exactly what is the name of this variable because 15 pixels it's used where, 14 pixels it's used where. It's not like I can create a variable named footer link and action containers button font size. We could say font medium, font big, font small, but I don't really see the purpose in doing that, as then what is medium, what is big? So I'm going to keep it as this. It's a bit repetitive, but maybe by the end I'll say, no, we need to make these variables and more generic. Let's see how this goes. Refreshing just our page, make sure it works. It's fine. It looks nice. Now we get to the fonts. Let's see which font Google uses. So let me inspect this Belgian, for example, here, and I see the font family being Arial and sans serif. Let's see maybe here the button, which is a font family. Where is it? Font family here, Arial and sans serif, probably around the whole web page. So let's just add this in our body. Font size, font family, Arial sans serif. Come back to our page, refresh. It looks way similar to what Google had. Now that we are done with the serifs, it looks better. Philippe, why Google use Arial and sans serif instead of like a more beautiful font or even like Roboto, which is a font from Google themselves for Android? Most likely because of speed and accessibility. Okay, so it makes sure that it's their web page, it's the simplest possible to run on each and every possible environment you may imagine. And that's why sometimes they take the decisions as going as simple as possible. What I'm noticing though is that the font color of our buttons, they are not in here as well. They're not exactly the ones as here. And if we see here, yes, they use a different color, which is 47, 47, 47. Is it the same for the buttons? No, the buttons isn't a different one. Perfect. Tons of different colors. So let's say that the base color is still this one, but the color for the language container, it will be the 47, 47, 47, which could be a variable here as well. But let's create then one color text 47, 47, 47. And now here just use the variable for color text. So we also train a bit about creating variables, scoped contents and all. And the button themselves have a color of, I forgot already. Let's inspect this this one. And this is quite tricky. But let's already then bring everything of this. As you see here, look how interesting. They already add here a background color, a border, and a border radius. We can add this as well on our side. So a border radius to make the buttons a bit more rounded. And let's add here some colors then. So color background, which will be this one. Let's say color text, which will be this one. Then again, you don't need to create variables necessarily for this, but it can be useful. So for color text. Here we can also say color border equals what? Equals this background color var background color. And now we can use the third variable that we created, or even there directly define the border, but that's not necessarily. You can go here and remove this. So now we have our variables defined for the colors, and this one is repeating this one just so we don't have the same value repeated across our page. If we refresh, it looks better. Oh, it looks better, way less aggressive. The same goes for our input border, which when selected, it here becomes purple for me, but here it doesn't have any other color, although there is a transition here that we're going to work on later. But the inspect here, we'll find out that, let's find out this div. The border is of this color. So let's add this then. Border color for the input search. Where is the input? Here, I'm already on it. Border 1 pixel solid and of this color. Now, again, color border. This one, create a variable for like this. Come back to our page, refresh. Oof, way cleaner. I like it.